So my name's Ernestine Fu. I come from San Francisco. I'm an investor at a venture firm called Alsop Louie Partners, which focuses on cybersecurity, big data enterprise, and also disruptive frontier tech.
Great. Cool. My name is Paul Rivera, co-founder and CEO of Kalibrr. We're a recruitment and job matching platform in Southeast Asia. For me, kind of AI is something. Machine learning, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the differences, but machine learning is something that we use at Kalibrr to help create a better recruitment experience. AI is a big existential threat to the Philippines. This is the world's largest call center destination, employs roughly 1.5 million people, generates roughly 10% of the national GDP, $27 billion. Call center jobs are some of the first jobs that will be and is already currently being disrupted by AI. So, yeah.
Right, so that sense of insecurity and opportunity is combined when we're looking at this topic. And I have lots of insecurity. My name is Duncan Clark. I'm a foreigner, the dwindling foreigners living in China, as we were just hearing some of these interesting questions. The good news is if you work with a strong team, and we have 130 people in my company in Beijing, all Chinese, this is why I travel a lot, to keep out of trouble in China. We advise investors on investments into areas including AI, which nobody knows exactly what it means, but it's a great way to get investment into your company. And in addition, I read the book on Alibaba, or a book on Alibaba, which, of course, itself is investing heavily in some of these technologies. I just came from Shanghai, where we had the Shuangxi, the Double 11 shopping festival. I could actually see last night from the rooftop bar the Lazada 1111, which is Alibaba's local, Southeast Asian business. It's almost machine shopping now happening in China. So, I think the machines are buying for us. We wake up. There was a hilarious story of a guy who doesn't remember being so drunk he was buying like live iguanas on Tmall. And it was very strange. But basically, you feel in China the sense of top-down, obviously, government support for AI. Controversially, just over a year ago, China announced its sort of AI master plan, where it's going to build a $150 billion worth of business and become a leader in various aspects of AI by 2025, 2030. Interestingly, last month, China's government started talking more about international cooperation in AI, because obviously there's a bit of a trade war going on, and this focus on China, Made in China 2025, plus this AI plan kind of fused this. So these, some of these topics we just addressed were sort of China's influence in the world, but also, machine learning, deep learning. We'll get into those definitions. So a lot of stuff to talk about here, and so I think you just started to define it. So let's start with you, and let's get some definitions here, because this means different things to different people.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with the problem that we're trying to solve. It's a two-sided problem. How do people find work efficiently, or find relevant work efficiently? And how do employers and recruiters find talent? Today, it's a relatively unstructured, noisy process. Employers will go to a job board, they will post a job, and they will get lots and lots of resumes in their inbox in doc or kind of PDF format. On the other side of it, you have young people in kind of the world that we work in who don't know what job they want. And then you give them a search box, go find a job. And so they literally do not know what to put in that search box. Maybe a couple brand names, Accenture, maybe the bigger banks, but their behavior is to spam as many companies as possible, just so they can kind of get a job. What we aim to do with machine learning, and rather than AI, because I think that's still relatively far away, is on the recruiter side, how do we build tools, how do we build a machine that can help them identify the most relevant people instantly? So they get 100 people applying to a job. Our platform can help identify, stack rank the top 20 people that you should engage with and interview first.
This is like pattern recognition, things that you're looking for.
Pattern recognition. So it's looking both at the data that's in someone's profile, as well as their behaviors.
Right.
What types of jobs do these people apply to? What types of jobs do they get interviewed at?
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at that pattern to begin to make recommendations on both sides of the marketplace. Recommendations to job seekers and jobs that we think that they might be great for, that they never knew about or didn't think that they would be qualified for. And on the other side, as soon as you post a job on Kalibrr, we begin to immediately recommend people that are actively looking for work to engage with immediately. So in kind of our view, in the 2.5 to 3 years that we've been developing our own machine learning approaches, we see a lot of positive benefit to recruiters who are now able to spend their time recruiting. Kind of our philosophy with AI and automation is we want AI and machines to do what they do best. Relatively lower impact administrative tasks. In the view of recruitment, it's looking for people to potentially interview. We automate all of that. Now, with our tool, recruiters can spend almost all of their time with humans. But and there was a comment here that really it's that human-to-human interaction that's most important. And so kind of we see the positive near-term benefit of a machine learning approach in a day-to-day life of a recruiter because they can actually do much more meaningful work today than maybe a year ago. Because if you actually look at the work of what a recruiter does, they're on LinkedIn, they're sending the same message over and over and over, hoping to build a list of people that are interested and qualified. We can get to that immediately so that recruiters can kind of do what they do best.
Now you're investing in, you described frontier tech.
So basically AI touches upon almost every single one of our investments besides being like the sexy buzzword that you use in pitches. Like everyone, everyone has to have the word AI in their pitch. So AI, I guess, I don't know how many of you like interact with AI on a regular basis, but AI, essentially artificial intelligence or machine intelligence, is in contrast to human or natural intelligence, basically machines being able to automate different processes and intelligently learn how to solve problems and incorporate a lot of human elements in terms of problem solving, reasoning, but using it all via machines. So different components of AI that we see in our investments include, for instance, like computer vision and being able to identify different animals or objects or use them in security cameras, or for instance, identify individuals and humans in terms of this is this celebrity, this is that celebrity, this is this type of cat, this is this type of dog. So computer vision being one application. Also natural language processing being another application of AI. So for instance, being able to look at, say, a series of tweets or a set of paragraphs or a couple sentences and be able to assess that this sentence, which is talking about Beyonce, is actually talking about music, even if the word music isn't in that sentence. So we have lots of different applications of AI that are present in our investments.
And you may not know, we have a new initiative called Asia 22, and they're already in the next room, actually in the lab. So
all the robots.
No pressure, but we're looking for something exceptional from you guys. Otherwise,
So that element of this excitement on the investment side, obviously, it's a great way, as I said, to raise money. Funds are raising funds based on this opportunity. But let's start with deployment, just continue the thought, and then we'll go maybe some different stuff. So the Philippines, companies like yourselves are adopting this stuff, but there's also this existential question because a lot of this AI, R&D stuff is coming out of, frankly, the United States and China, France, and a few others are trying to get involved. But what happens in Southeast Asia if it's not being pioneered here at the research level?
And I think Duncan makes a good point. There's really only a handful of companies doing like really deep kind of AI.
The BATs, the FANGs,
the DeepMind, Google. A lot of them are applying AI or machine learning techniques to build better tools. Right. And that's kind of what we're doing in the recruitment world. In the context of the Philippines, the city that you're sitting in right now did not exist 10 years ago. This city was built on the backs of the Philippine call center industry, which started to arrive here in the early 1990s with Accenture when they began to actually outsource accounting here. And so that work began to come here. It also began to come to India. But it really began to accelerate in the early 2000s.
Yes.
And it became the biggest industry in the Philippines. Today, employing roughly 1.5 million people, generating close to $30 billion in GDP. The second biggest component of Philippine GDP, I don't know if you guys know, is remittances.
Right.
So it's Filipinos who live outside the Philippines sending money back. right? So we're either exporting our voices, right, and earning money, or we're sending money back through people who could not find work here. So this industry has become quite large.
Yeah.
It's become quite important because it's not just the 1.5 million people directly employed, it's roughly 5 million people who are indirectly employed, all of the services that need to exist in order for this industry, for this entire city, to kind of exist.
And multiply by their families and all the spending. And
correct, right? Yeah. So it's massive kind of impact on it's the number one reason why the Philippines has come back, right? The resurgence has been on the backs of the outsourcing industry. A couple of years ago, as kind of AI began to become something that was increasingly talked about, the governing body for the Outsourcing Association really began to think about its impact on the Philippines. Because when you think about the majority of the work that has been outsourced, it's relatively low skill customer service work. Mm-hmm. That type of work has already begun to be automated. You have IVRs, right? You have things that you can do via phone. So it's actually a little bit harder to get directly to a human. These types of tasks are being automated, and now there are companies, both in the Valley and also BPOs, who are beginning to apply AI to their own organizations to begin to disrupt themselves. Because a U.S. company will pay roughly $17 an hour, $15 to $17 an hour, to outsource work to the Philippines, kind of fully baked in. I can imagine an AI tool doing it for a fraction of the cost, and even potentially providing a better level of service, right? So the big problem in the Philippines now is, what will you do with 1 million call center agents who over the next it's not going to happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen 3 years from now, but in the next 5 or 10 years, there will be a level of displacement with the people who are already working in this industry. And then there are hundreds of thousands of people graduating from school who may have gone into this industry that no longer is going to be growing at the rate it historically has grown, or will actually begin to shrink. So it's a big upskilling and retraining issue that the Philippines is talking about now. How do you get low-skill call center workers to become analytics professionals? That's hard. How do you get them to become IT professionals? A little bit easier. But it's a kind of a big issue that not just the Philippines will have to contend with, but many countries around the world will have to contend with, because a lot of the impact on AI type tools will actually be on white collar jobs. A call center job in the Philippines is a white collar job. You're making $500 to $800 a month. That's a entry level middle class, emerging middle class job. Those will be jobs that disappeared in America 10 to 20 years ago. Soon will disappear here, and kind of AI will just kind of accelerate this demolition of white collar work. Initially, it started with outsourcing. Now it's technology and AI that will really begin to demolish what white collar work looks like today. But it doesn't mean that new types of jobs won't be created. It's just, will our educational systems, will our government policies be able to react at the pace of innovation that's happening? And hard to say that the Philippines is acting fast enough.
And it is something we've seen in the past before in terms of the Industrial Revolution, and there's a lot of conversation around AI being the fourth Industrial Revolution, and also within the U.S. and almost every single kid who grows up in elementary school, you always learn how to read, write, and do math, and that fourth language that you need to learn is programming, since AI is applicable to every single industry, and there's schools and universities who are now hiring AI professors focused on specific fields, like MIT, for instance, just launched a new AI center in which you can apply AI not just in the medical field and the autonomous vehicle field, just every single field is being disrupted by AI and needing to learn how to program and actually adapt to that.
And you're actually investing in companies that have AI on the business plan. But I mean, how much of that is real, and how much is it branding at this point? What do you see?
Well, I can't tell you that exactly.
Well, what you invest in AI, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things with AI is, at the end of the day, to actually deploy AI effectively, you need a lot of data. You need a lot of data to actually process. And
it needs to be some way structured in some cases, right? This is the important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of our our companies, like they'll range from, for instance, like a computer vision company that is consumer facing in terms of being able to collect millions of video data that's being uploaded on a regular basis, but they're using AI and computer vision to be able to program things and learn about those videos more effectively than anyone else. So like one of our companies, they are doing better than Google's AI system in computer vision, since Google AI, they identified an African-American couple as gorillas a few years ago, and then basically being able to, say accurately, well, this is this person and this is that person. You're seeing it in terms of like Facebook, like a few years ago, you're manually tagging every single person in your photo. And then now Facebook just automatically tells you, like, based on all the photos that you're uploading on a regular basis, this is Duncan.
Delete those photos.
Yeah. But they still save it. But, we're also looking at things, for instance, on the autonomous vehicle front. So I've done a couple investments in that space, and that's just one application of AI that's going to completely transform.
So these are elements of the self-driving. So
elements of the self-driving car. So for instance, like being able to identify using computer vision and LiDAR, identify what objects are on the road and being able to navigate those, being able to collect massive amounts of data as these cars are driving, or as these autonomous vehicles are driving along the road. They're collecting information about the surroundings and being able to have a really complicated, detailed internal map and know which way to navigate, and then using AI to make sure that the new tennis ball that rolls on the street, you're not hitting it or anything like that. So
your hands, by the way, behind you, your hands are like being magnified in the camera. It's great. So like every gesture you make is like, it's like AI enhancement.
I'll add a quick point. It's kind of ironic. One of the faster growing sectors of the Philippine outsourcing industry is the AI labeling industry.
Right.
So a company like Cruise Automation, which GM, I think, invested or acquired, they have hundreds of people here doing labeling on the LiDAR that's being seen. So you have Filipinos, thousands of Filipinos kind of working throughout the Philippines.
So tell us how that works. So they're looking at an image and tagging it.
They're tagging it.
And that's being then put on the map.
Correct. Or they're looking at that sign and saying, is that really a sign?
Right. Like we have to do for our CAPTCHA.
Correct.
When they make us do that work to get into our email or something.
So the Filipinos are literally training their potential replacement.
Yeah, and I think in China, from the China case, I mean, Guizhou is in southwest China is having a major push both in big data. Some of it's also hosting, obviously data centers and things, but also a lot of people being trained to do the structuring of data, which is, people saying, well, it's repetitive and so on. But these guys who 10 years ago would be working in the factory or in the farms, and now this is actually it's regular pay. They're moving up, and so Guizhou suddenly is attracting tons of investment. Alibaba's building a massive center down there. Tencent's already open. So there is a lot of job creation
it's like
in getting to
blue collar type of job.
Right. So yeah, it's sort of in China we have white collar, we have gold collar. Maybe this is some kind of AI collar, what that's going to be. But there's some to some extent you're thinking of it as maybe putting yourself out of a job long term. But there's it's like the guys who put the horseshoes moving into tires and so on. So there is this transition. So it's going to be about retraining, or it's going to be about training people for new things coming. I just want to ask you one thing about these graduates now going still into BPO.
Yeah.
What's their view on this? I mean, are they then trying to seek jobs in these new emerging areas?
I think you hear a lot about AI, in the CNNs and the Time Magazine. But when you think about the day-to-day life of a 23-year-old Filipino, they're making $500 to $600 a month. First person to graduate from college, they're literally just trying to think about how do I get by, right?
And the salaries are still there. I mean, they're still increasing.
Salaries are still there.
It's not like you've seen a decline.
No, and I think we don't anticipate the industry to just disappear overnight.
So it's a gradual.
It'll just flatten out,
right?
Because I think will always kind of be a demand to speak with human beings. It's just that demand will be much less because you're going to have tools like what Google has done with their dualplex. They've automated a call center. Those tools are going to become kind of here in the next 1 or 2 years.
And you mentioned the remittance market, and we heard last night from our host at Globe, obviously their partnership with Alibaba or Ant Financial actually, because obviously the remittance market, Alibaba actually tried, we'll cover this in a minute, like restrictions on Chinese investment in the United States, because Ant Financial tried to buy into MoneyGram in the United States, was blocked. But there is, a lot of, the bottom of the pyramid kind of staff. People are getting ripped off unnecessarily by, highly manual and, processing of things. So to cut to the chase, I mean, Ant Financial in China now is able to issue microloans in seconds because with zero human involvement. So there's an opportunity to disrupt jobs in the financial sector, but also to, in theory, allow more credit to go based on your records, and that's another whole Black Mirror discussion we can talk about. But what are we seeing in FinTech? Let's talk a bit about FinTech. Maybe start with are you looking in that area in the Valley, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for FinTech specifically, I think one interesting thing about AI is being able to since you can gather so much personal data on someone, you can automatically pulling their social profiles, their like past financial records, like just assess like, well, this person pay their bills next. And I think that's one application of AI. At the same time, I think that AI still isn't advanced enough to completely replace humans. And we're seeing a lot of what we call basically like just like companies that are AI supported, but not fully AI reliant. And
it's a tool for humans.
To actually be able to work faster, but not completely replacing humans. And one of the like most simple examples of that is that there's a lot of companies that popped up in Silicon Valley around AI-powered assistants, like virtual assistants, people who can do your calendar scheduling.
What was her name? Annie, Amy, or something? People like emailing them. Is she free? Is she free on Saturday?
Yeah,
like
just bot, you would think that they would just like be able to do your scheduling perfectly, but a lot of these companies, what they'll do is they'll use AI basically for most of the work, but still use the humans at the very end of the day. So they'll have humans who are actually behind the computer. The AI is actually assessing what exactly is this person is like the email. What are you trying to achieve in the email? But then they'll have like these auto responses, and at the end of the day, the humans actually clicking that final button and that final send.
There's still that partnership going on, until the singularity. But
there's a saying I learned: it's expensive to be poor.
It's expensive to be poor. That's right.
Right. If it's expensive to send money home. If you're a blue collar worker in the Philippines and you want to get a job as a maid in Hong Kong, you have to pay to get a job. We don't have to pay to look for work, right? So it's very expensive to be poor. Kind of in the FinTech side, there are more Facebook accounts in the Philippines than there are bank accounts. This is one of the most severely underbanked populations in the world.
Although Maybank, our host, is doing a wonderful job right? Are they a sponsor, or are we just renting? I don't know.
More branches, more accounts, less leaders. So you have just basically an entire, more than half of the population who does not have a bank account and who then does not have access to any credit. Most of the credit that they have is a very high interest type. Right. In the Philippines, it's called 5-6. I give you $5 today, you give me $6 tomorrow. 20% plus type interest rate. So the Philippines has now become one of the hottest sectors for FinTech because you have these big problems. And the big problem is not just the people don't have bank accounts, it's they don't have a credit score. Right. So I've now seen many companies, both local companies as well as foreign companies, that beginning to enter the Philippines to begin to offer some form of a payday loan using both social kind of profile, but also kind of who you know. Right. That's what I've heard to be the most powerful kind of thing. It's not just who you are, but who are the quality of the friends around you.
Well, this goes back, we heard talk about earlier about Bangladesh, right, and the origins of Grameen. I mean, this is like an online expression of that community. Also with women, in some cases, always being a better credit than men, as we've heard. So we are seeing, an adapt. So culture is very important, right? I mean, as you say, like Philippines has this, and we should probably talk broadly about the market. Obviously, we talked a bit about China, but what else do we see in our region? And maybe we should start opening up to the floor because otherwise we'll be replaced. So what do you guys feel in your areas? Are you seeing applications of AI or people who claim that it's AI in your region that you think are resonating? Yes, sir. And if you could just tell us where you're from so we know. I'm sorry, I'm new to this group.
I was actually trying to think of jobs that will be replaced, but Duncan, with your sense of humor, I don't think that's a job that can be replaced easily.
I'm actually a droid, actually.
Yeah.
So.
It's actually, is this open to questions?
Yeah, let's. Okay. This is your group.
I guess the question that I had for you guys is, what are the jobs that are going to be there in the future? You spoke about two, I think, data analytics with more data. And then coding, right? Because you said English, math, and the new subject for the future is coding. But theoretically, even coding and data analytics can be automated.
Right.
So then I guess storytelling, et cetera, right? But how many of those jobs are needed?
Yeah.
So sort of more theoretical, but eventually what happens longer term?
Moderators, panelists,
No, like I said, I think it's hard to replace you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the scary things about AI. And if you think about it, not 10 years from now, not like 100 years from now, but like 200 years from now or more, is that like right now, a lot of the applications of AI are what a lot of people call narrow AI. So you're just trying to accomplish one specific task in terms of like you have a car and you want to drive autonomously, and it's just going to do that. And you're going to use AI to do that. But then in terms of like a lot of conversations around like the future of AI and humanity is that the one thing that AI lacks is this ability to basically have empathy and I guess like a certain level of reason that humans have. So for instance, if you tell a human like, how do we solve poverty? Like, like we're all trying to figure out ways to actually solve poverty. But if you tell an AI system, like, how do you solve poverty? Like the natural response will probably be like, oh, we'll just, kill off a bunch of humans and, poverty's solved.
Right. So we need to optimize for Bhutan. We need Bhutan in the room. They've actually left the room. But we need Bhutan here because ethics may be ultimately the most important thing, right? To your point. So
it's this notion of soft skills.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're thinking about how do you not become redundant in the future, focus on the people skills.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the skills that are going to be very, very hard to replace. It's empathy. It's leadership. It's critical thinking. It's being able to communicate with other human beings. I have a 2-year-old son, right? I think deeply about education because I think about what will the world look like when he's working in 20 years? What are the skills that he's going to need? A lot of the hard skills by 20 years from now should have been applied via AI, right? A lot of those problems that we think about as work today, I think it's going to be solved. What is he going to be doing then? And then I think he's going to need to be creative. He's going to need to be potentially entrepreneurial, and he's going to need to work effectively with people.
Right.
Right. Understanding technology will just kind of be built in because he's going to grow up with it, right?
That's right. And I guess everybody who hasn't seen it should see the AlphaGo documentary on Netflix, but it has these moments, where you just have this creepy feeling of actually, just giving up, but the empathy that comes towards, in this case, the South Korean master of Go, is amazing to witness, but also how he's able to take one game off the machine. But it's an amazing, it really crystallizes those emotions. But in a sense, then realizing that it can actually improve the way he plays, and now thinking like completely unexpected ways of looking at a problem. And that's DeepMind. And I spoke to one of the co-founders of DeepMind last year about, this education question. And to your point, what should they learn? It's not just coding. It's coding plus something. It could be, philosophy. He was talking a lot about the ethical elements of this, or, because coding is coding. And he said you could end up investing all your time in one language, which is completely irrelevant, in 3 years' time, and then you're stuck. So it's that ability to be cross-discipline. And I think that's what Asia 21 is. Sorry, a bit of a segue here. In terms of regionally, we're crossing a huge area, but also the structure of this group is not just finance guys or not just engineers. It's this blend. So I think this kind of gathering is actually what we need more of.
Yeah, because I think, we should all aim. I genuinely feel that AI is going to be one of the most important things that will impact our lives. So I think everyone in this room should, one, be curious about it, curious enough to learn about it.
Right.
Two, use it in some form in your work or in your projects so that when the discussions happen, you're informed. And you can begin to then shape the policy discussions that will happen, that will need to happen in wherever you live.
And we should talk about that, like big tech. The attitudes towards big technology companies have shifted a lot. Right. We have this orange president in the United States that may have been elected through this. We have, in China, interestingly, in China, we have a more positive, generally, attitude towards technology because the offline wasn't very good. Like offline retail wasn't very good. Banks were horrible. The post office didn't work. So now everybody's investing in, moving online, and they like it to a great degree. Although Robin Li from Baidu controversially said Chinese will always trade privacy for convenience, and he was lambasted for that. Although he's basically right, because we're seeing there's no cash anymore in China. So where's the privacy of where you're spending and so on? What are you seeing in terms of attitudes in the region? And you look at Asia as well, right? So, or maybe in the US where you're investing. This is going to be the big determinant, like how we embrace or resist this technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think like probably there's definitely a strong U.S.-China war that's happening around AI and just technology in general. And we were chatting before this panel about, like, for instance, CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., is clamping down harder and harder over the past few months and over the past year specifically in terms of traditionally you've seen if you're a company in Silicon Valley that's trying to get your company acquired, you have all the U.S. buyers like the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters. They're acquiring a lot of companies. And then what we've seen in Silicon Valley is that you'll see a lot of Chinese buyers. The large tech companies in China, Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, they're acquiring these companies at a much higher dollar amount than what a U.S. company might pay for. And I think part of that's all about the data war that's happening in terms of, I mentioned earlier that for AI, one of the big things is that if you have more data about people, images, just like personal information in general, then you're going to be able to create a better AI system. It's not because necessarily like your algorithm is fancier than someone else's, but if you have more data, you're at a significantly higher advantage point. And one of the things as we're seeing this US-China AI and data war that's happening is that, for instance, like the US government with CFIUS and Committee on Foreign Investment is clamping down on letting these Chinese companies acquire US companies who have a lot of personal data.
Yeah, we've seen blocking of deals. But also, I just a friend of mine who has pioneer in the a big player in the Chinese venture world moved to the US a few years ago, and she lived in both. And now she's moving back to China because, as a VC, she can no longer be a board member, according to CFIUS, in like Frontier Tech. So she can't invest if she's not going to be a board member. So it's really happening right now. You are seeing talent. And we'll see what happens in this G20 meeting between the orange person and the other guy. But we'll see lots of noise around this. But it is already, the stakes are getting bigger. The U.S. is responding. I mean, with some extent, asleep a bit in terms of the security aspects of this, it seems. So the Pentagon is, for example, pouring in like $3 billion, but actually the amount that China has deployed. But, how much of this is, with all these new trends, there could be a lot of waste, right? There could, as you said, a lot of technology that goes wrong, that can, incorrectly identify things. So we're probably going to see a bit of a dip in the AI mania when we start hearing more of how it's not working. And then I guess we'll see this. So, it's adapting to this trend without necessarily surrendering. And so in the Philippines, do you think, how confident are you the Philippines could learn, for example, they know all about the BPO industry. That's their industry. So can they then help program? And can they do that alone, or do they need to work with Japan or with China or the U.S.? How's that going to play out?
The Philippine government has a lot of other priorities right now.
Yeah, like a road from the airport. Sorry. We love this place, but it's kind of hard to get to.
This drug war that kind of continues.
Right.
I wish the Philippines was a little bit more forward-thinking and is actually prioritizing it. It's primarily coming from the private sector. So the private sector employers are the ones kind of organizing themselves and advocating the government to then prioritize both the partnership initiatives as well as the education initiatives
to do their job.
To do their jobs and to prepare ourselves for this, because it's like you see the tsunami, but you're not really doing anything about it, right? We're just kind of staying by the beach and looking at this wave that gets bigger and bigger every year. So
companies, in a sense, this is what's happening. Companies, cities, or like this segment of a city are taking the initiative when the federal level, and it's not just talking about this country, many places are not keeping up with this stuff. Right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's good, because that then leads to potentially more tribalism, right? More of the social segmentation that you're seeing now. It has very real ramifications in this country.
Let's get some more from the audience. Yes, sir. The gentleman in the red tie. But he doesn't have orange hair, so it's okay. Oh, sorry, she has a mic. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm not in charge. Get used to it.
So I'm Manisha from Afghanistan. This looks very interesting topic.
Can you speak up a bit? Sorry, we can't hear her. Sorry, just a bit closer to the... Thank you. Thank you.
This topic looks very interesting, especially that I'm coming from a country where it's not yet as automated as everyone else is. So I'm very interested to know what the risks are for making everything so automated, and what I'm sure you have foreseen the risk. And so how will you tackle if something would happen? For example, if the whole system crashes down.
Right. Dependence on key infrastructure, which crashes.
If you become so dependent on machines. So what are other risks, and how will you
I think
tackle?
we're already dependent on machines. Like if we didn't have our phones, what would we do? Sorry.
You couldn't hear me if I wasn't here. Right? So machines are, we depend on machines.
Already, yeah.
So
what was the question?
So what are the risks as I guess, critical infrastructure style risk, and then we touched on some ethical risks. What do you think the biggest risks are?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is that traditionally people, at least coming from the U.S. perspective, people who are working in policy and government aren't the technology experts, and as a result, they're not thinking in advance what's the right policy to put in place. So just to use another example, like I've invested in a couple of 3D printing companies, and as my colleagues and I were just doing research and testing out 3D printing, we managed to print a gun, an AR-15 gun, using a 3D printer, because in the US you can buy every single part of an AR-15 gun except for the lower receiver. So what we did was we grabbed a video file from a video game, created that lower receiver piece, and we just put together
Everybody move quietly towards the door.
It's right here now. But then the thing is, from a U.S. policy perspective, obviously there was nothing that was blocking you from saying that the video game that every single person is playing, you can just grab that 3D file and just print out a part of a gun and assemble a gun from that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in terms of how do we actually encourage people who are working in government, working in policy, bringing in more people who are tech experts to actually help shape.
No, it's obvious. We just banned 3D printers. That's what we do in China, but no, we wouldn't.
But then at the same time, if you look at 3D printing and all the different applications it can have outside of warfare, but in terms of custom printing, like medical parts, and actually, saving lives, and actually having positive applications of that. But how do you actually distinguish between the two in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed? And
so there's a risk right there. Yeah.
That's one example of just how do you educate policymakers of upcoming technology?
Because are geeks ethical? This is a big question.
I think it's an important point that if AI it's going to become intelligent at some point, it's important that not all the geeks are men, right? So there needs to be women and women leaders at these organizations, shaping and tweaking not just the algorithms but the policies, right? I think that's super, super, super important that it's not just geeks in a room kind of determining what the future of a machine sentient being is going to look like.
That's kind of the way we are right now, and the world's a little bit screwed up right now. Sir, yes, the very patient gentleman.
So my name's Tim Watts. I'm a policymaker, a member of Parliament in Australia at the moment. But before that, I worked in the Australian telecommunications sector for about a decade. And through that, I got a passion for gadgets and technology and innovation. I really love all that. But also got a very healthy skepticism for the hype curve and the promises that came for every technology. And one of the things that sort of always sets my skepticism radar off is when people say it's 5 years away. 5 years is just outside that accountability time frame where you can come back in 2 years and say, well, you said, where is it? And a lot of the AI products that I've seen over the last 5 years to 10 years have stayed in that 5 years away Netherland. And I sort of look at it and think that the things we thought were quite easy, we're now realizing are very hard. So AI is something that's very easy to do badly, very hard to do well. So scheduling we were talking about before. I know in my office, my diary manager has my hardest job. The context you require to be able to manage my diary as a politician well, it's not just making the boxes fit well. You need to know context about
Is your diary manager, is that Android or iPhone? Oh, you're talking about a person? Or?
No machine could manage my diary in a way that would not result with me losing my job.
You've tried, and you're still in office, so
And the same with autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles, were 5 years away, 5 years ago.
So this receding horizon problem.
And so I just want to ask the question with a specific one. Is this a problem that's going to be solved just with better data? Or is there a bigger obstacle here, and that we need to think differently about context for AI applications? So the example I always use for this as a ignorant Australian is translation services. There is enormous demand for translation services, and Asia 21 leaders will feel this acutely when we move throughout the region. But translation is hard. it is really, really hard because it relies on context that is outside the text that is being translated, and it relies on context that so far AI, machine learning, hasn't been able to grapple with. So the question I have for you guys is, do you think that, look, eventually we'll collect enough data, enough metadata, and all this will become solvable? Quantum computing will come online and we'll just throw all that processing power at the biggest data sets we'll ever seen? Or is there a bigger obstacle to these narrow AI applications that's not going to be solved?
You can choose any language you want to respond.
I think it's super important to separate the headlines that we see on the internet and Facebook, because they can be very sensationalized, and they hype up a reality that in my work is a little bit farther away, right? It's probably a 5 to 10 year window, right? Even less accountability, where I really, before it's really, really impacting us at a very measurable level, whether it's up or kind of down. I would say separate the headlines from the reality, and I think who you want to listen to are the people who are actually building it, who are actually beginning to apply it, because they'll give you a much clearer sense of what's near term versus long term.
And that's the problem, because Twitters are basically headlines.
From some of the most uninformed people.
So get off Twitter. Yeah,
get off Twitter.
Our dear sponsor? No.
Yeah, I mean, I think my view is that several years from now, not in the next 5 years, AI really is going to be advancing at a pace that's more intelligent than human brains and what humans can process. And I actually fear the day in which, if we think about how we react to ants right now, there's more ants in the world than there are humans, but then we just crush the ants. We want to build a new building, and there's a bunch of there's an anthill in the way, and we'll just destroy it instantly. And I think that's one of the risks of AI long term. And I do think it will get to that phase, not in the next 5 years, but several years from now, in terms of an AI system. If we don't manage to rein it in properly, they'll be able to think well, I want to take this next advancement in humanity, and there's a couple humans in the way, so let's just destroy the humans and then continue on.
Yeah. I recommend everyone read the book Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. I don't know if you guys have read Super Intelligence. It's a little bit on the fear-mongering side, but it'll kind of give you a view to why the people who are on the more fearful side are fearful of AI, and kind of what he was telling in that story is, if there's an AI that's developed and the objective is to build as many paperclips as possible, the AI will literally shape the entire world to optimize for that singular objective.
Right.
So if the humans know that it'll kill all the humans to just if the humans know that the AI will just kill all of us, what the AI will do is it will pretend to not be that smart. It will pretend to be less clever so that it can hide itself on the internet and then engage with real human beings and turn itself on when it's ready, right? I don't know if that's a likely scenario, but that is a scenario that's been painted by a fairly influential guy thinking about AI. It's someone that I'm sure Elon listens to him quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things in which AI has that exponential curve in terms of, so you mentioned the Go movie, and so the first instance of an AI that was learning how to play Go was that they were gathering all this information about how the best human experts in Go and the best Go players played Go, and they learned how to basically beat every single person over the course of several weeks. And then the second AI system that was developed in Go was only over a course of a few days or several hours, and then they just developed that AI system just developed new algorithms that didn't even rely on learning from all of these human Go players, and
playing its own game, right?
Yeah, playing its own game, playing against itself, developed all these new algorithms for how to play Go, and then was able to beat that first AI system. And it's just one of those things in which it's that exponential learning curve, and we're kind of still over here, but we're going to get over there, and that's going to be a scary day.
Yeah. And on translation, I guess we have seen some beginning of applications, demonstrations where with the in-ear, you can terrible. You've tried them? I'm still learning Chinese, so I'm going to keep going. But I have had people in Silicon Valley are saying, why let your kids study foreign languages? I mean, this level of embrace. But the humanoid-shaped Cylon at the back. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Matt Schiavenza with Asia Society in New York. I just have a question based on it's kind of a darker aspect of AI, based on something that's happening right now in China, in Xinjiang, where the government is using facial recognition software and other AI-powered tools in a campaign against the Uyghur people. And not to make a political statement, but I've read today that this technology and other AI-related technology has been exported to Venezuela. And is there a real concern that AI will overpower privacy and AI will overpower individual rights in countries around the world? Is our legislators and our governments around the world prepared to deal with the ability of governments to really surveil populations at a level that they weren't really able to before? Are we having the right conversations about privacy and about maintaining a semblance of individual rights in an era when technology, as Ernestine just said, it becomes exponentially more powerful?
So autocracy fusing with tech.
Yeah, I think it's a real issue. I mean, if you look at in China, like WeChat, that's the main platform that everyone uses for payments, ordering food, ordering a taxi, dating, like everything, like all payments can get transacted on WeChat. Like you can basically wake up in the morning, play a game, message a few friends, tell your friend to come over, but basically like you order the taxi for them on WeChat. That person comes over, you guys order food, and like all this happens on WeChat. You don't even leave and go to any other app. Kind of the reference that WeChat is one of those super apps in which you don't have to leave the app to go to, like right now, like in the US, you might go to Uber or Lyft, or like, you might go to Grab Taxi, and then you then go to PayPal to like do some payment transaction or anything like that. So like WeChat is one of those companies in which they are collecting so much personal data on one individual every single day. And then the Chinese government requires that they turn over all of that data to the government. And then in the US, like we're seeing not as much of that super app presence yet, but a lot of companies that are trying to achieve that, like Facebook with Facebook Messenger is trying to mimic WeChat and include payments, personal assistance, like gaming, everything within the Messenger app. Like you have Snapchat doing the same thing, and all these companies that are trying to create the super apps. And then in the US, however, like they don't actually have to turn that data over in terms of U.S. citizen data over to the government. So I guess that's one of those questions.
They tell us, but
so I guess that's one of those questions in terms of like the people who actually collect all of that data, and it might not necessarily be the governments. In China's case, it's both WeChat and the government, but in the U.S. or like other countries, it might just be these large companies. And what do we actually do in terms of shaping policy and ethics around that? So
I think the answer is 2 phones, as I always have. So I have my Chinese phone, which is like super convenient, super surveilled, but at least they can, if I get lost, they'll know where I am. Help. And I have my U.S. phone where, allegedly it's secure, really, but and also a lot more expensive, and it's less efficient. So it's that. This sums it up, really. I mean, the seduction of the ease of use in China, shopping, obviously online, but also increasingly. I just was at the Hema supermarket, or Fresh Hippo supermarket, that Alibaba is setting up all over China. You walk in, you can decide to shop the normal way. You can have all the stuff sent to your home because it's always within 2K of your home. You could, and if you want, you can change your mind. Like you start shopping in the supermarket, then you're like, this is too much. You put it on a riser, it goes off in this like basket and is sent home to you. Everything, there's no cash till, of course, it's all with the Alipay and the Hippo app. So we are feeling this convenience is the ultimate way that companies and, as you were saying, government, I mean, the Xinjiang case is concerning, obviously, as to how technology is being used. I think everybody has to download an app to get through checkpoints and so on. So, autocracy is increasingly embracing this stuff and, looking to deliver stability from their standpoint. And the interesting thing, a lot of developing countries are looking for stability. I mean, everybody is like, look at the Philippines. I mean, the desire to avoid, crime and so on, but the way in which that's executed being the wrong, poor choice of words. But I mean, there is this interesting dichotomy now between Silicon Valley, originally sort of we're going to change the world, utopian views, and other very pragmatic ways that China is involving often in ways that people want because they're making life easier, and also government. So this is the new world that we're in. It's not exactly bipolar because it's getting quite mixed up. Like different, in Asia, we're at people coming here from Australia and New Zealand obviously feel it acutely as well. Like this, who's in charge?
And I think it's also important to highlight the difference in value systems, right? Americans highly value privacy.
Right.
In China, I don't think it's, what's the view of privacy kind of over the last 100 or 200 years? Or?
It's a relatively new concept. It's certainly a new China, right? Because when you live together and work together. Yeah.
So kind of how do you craft and engage governments and craft policy when the value systems are quite different? And I think to Tim's question kind of earlier, what are the things that are limiting? I don't think it's data. I think it's actually the right policy. Because if you don't craft any policy, then it kind of gets out of control. If you craft the wrong policy, then you limit it. How do you craft the right policy to actually enable the usefulness of AI to permeate in society?
Any other views on that? Yes.
Sorry, I have a question actually.
That's good. That's a view. We'll call it a view.
Hi.
We'll structure that question as a view. There we go.
Okay, then it's a view. It's a comment then. My name is Govinda. I come from Switzerland, batch of 2016. Work on education and training areas. And just an anecdote I remember, and then it's quite funny, but I just want a view from you guys.
Humor from Switzerland, we're all on edge.
Totally. So recently I met this Russian dude. He came to Switzerland. I live in Lausanne. So we have a very good education center. EdTech is booming there. So this Russian dude comes from Moscow, and he was sitting and we were just chatting, and he is having a just massive machine. I asked him, dude, what it does? He said, oh, it's an EdTech tool. Okay.
Sorry?
EdTech, education tool.
Oh, EdTech,
yeah,
sorry.
EdTech,
Okay.
yeah. And I like how it does. He's like, in Russia, the parents are looking that their children should not be retarded. So what we say, that you put the machine on the child's head, and my machine can tell that your child will be retarded or not. Means what problem? And then as a parent, you can train your child, that is below 5 years, to become engineers, doctor, mathematician, whatever. And I was like, whoa, that's a bit scary. That looks like Indian parents to me. Because I wanted to be
Asian country here in that box.
Yeah, Indian origin. So I know how I was dealt with. Means I wanted to be a cricket player, spinner, to be precise, and I became engineer. And I think that's the story for all the Asians kind of this. So okay, so initially 20 years back, my parents were telling me what you should do, even though you don't want to do. And now the AI will tell the parents, parents are not just, AI will tell, okay, this child should become a doctor. And these are the tools for you. For me, now living in Europe, it just scares me a little bit. But I don't know, is it it will just explode and reach a plateau of this whole dilemmas of whether AI can do or not, and automatically it will just stabilize at certain situation with the help of policy regulations or the limitation of machine or limitation of human being. So just want to comment on that.
I don't know. I think that's what makes it exciting and terrifying at the same time.
But it's great for conferences. They love it.
Yeah, but I think we as leaders in our communities have a role, again, to be informed, because it is going to be a very important issue, so that when these discussions come up, you can participate in the debate in an intelligent manner. Hopefully more intelligent than
What are you trying to say? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the analogy that I like to think of is, how many of you guys have read Mary Shelley's book, Frankenstein? A good number? Okay, so basically, the story of Frankenstein is that essentially Frankenstein is a monster that's created by a scientist.
So the monster's not Frankenstein.
Sorry.
Yeah, Frankenstein's monster is called the Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
But I always
Frankenstein is Frankenstein. Correct. Frankenstein is the monster that's created by Frankenstein.
That's right. Yeah.
And essentially, that monster ends up overpowering Frankenstein and whatnot. So
Right.
I think there's. I love reading fiction books because I think it has a lot of insight towards humanity and society, especially
Absolutely.
since Mary Shelley actually wrote the book before before like the Industrial Revolution, before, AI has emerged today. And just the idea of, you mentioned that a parent with their fancy AI machine can say like whether this kid is smart in certain aspects or not smart in other aspects, and the challenge of machines that we are creating playing the role of God essentially, and what exactly is our role in that creation, and how we're going to actually mitigate that and put that in check. So
I'm sure the parent programmed the machine to say you're going to be a doctor. That was just a way of outsourcing, right? So because if the parent told them directly, they wouldn't believe it, but now they can say that the machine says so. Yeah. So this reminds me of Jack Ma, who once said he actually started stealing or inventing quotes from Bill Gates when he was starting his business. He was trying to popularize people to go on the internet in Hangzhou and stuff, and they're like, "What's the internet?" And he said, so he started saying, before Bill Gates had actually realized the importance of the internet, he said, Bill Gates has said the internet is going to change our lives, and it's fine. He said, I lied, because if I said Jack Ma is going to say that, who's Jack Ma? So, and he was convinced that eventually Bill Gates would be right. And actually, famously, Bill Gates was a bit late to the internet, and then he did start saying these things. Anyway, so sometimes you have to be ahead, and you have to bend the truth a bit. Anyway, that's what we're trying to do today, is bend the truth. This was a fake news AI panel, so thank you very much. I look forward to the next one. Thank you. Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you.